having like anxiety on Friday, and I'm like 3 weeks. Yeah, I mean, I don't really have to do this. I don't have to do it. So, I can, but I will call, oh, you are. Should I do it first thing? Do you want me to try to do it in the morning? And then if it's any other day this week, tomorrow.
I don't know what I'm doing. I'm waiting for
Yeah. 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 All right, thank you. All right. Yeah. Yeah, you know, I'm just gonna I'm sure I'll see the code. Okay. All right, talk to you later. Okay, bye. New notification about needing further information regarding a lawsuit, and I'm just following up with you to see, as far oh my goodness, that's so cool. I haven't seen you for a while. I didn't know if you guys had. Oh, like why bars? Just like a. She just graduated from college. Oh, whatever. Right. Right. And but I think because they're college students, they also don't realize that their college years count towards their qualification.
I have no many. Well, maybe she's, yeah, I think she's just graduating, so she can start school. Okay. These her and so they both, a lot of people don't do that, you know? Huh? The goal is they don't live away, but I'm like, even if you move away in 2 years, if you own a home, you're moving away, you have $20,000 in your pocket. If you sell it, yeah. So do it. Right? That's what you want to say. Or they. Right. It would depend on like this. Yeah. Right. For my crown 5 years, they might well live a lot more. Now that's right. Right. Yeah. They will call you like that. Yes.
Stolen and left. I think we should charge them.
I think so too.
If you don't have something to write with, like in a scrap of paper, let me know. I'm gonna make y'all do math, so make sure you have something to write with. Some people just like hate carrying paper, so I brought some scrap paper just in case. There's kind of room to write in there, but I don't want you scribbling math on the contract. I want you to like
Yeah.
such a subject right now.
Are you doing any more fees this year? I would will. Oh, why is it what you do?
Because I had to reschedule from today. I didn't have time in May.
Yeah.
And then June, if Karina's gonna be here for one of your meetings, so I can't do it after our meetings because it's too close in
Right.
time. Then the only week the meeting will be open in June, I'm on vacation, and it's just time's up.
Yeah.
Fine. So, I had to do a full class of it first to check, make sure, like, how long the class is.
Yeah.
It's either an hour or an hour and a half. We go just over an hour, I'll add an extra 10. There is additional. I wrote it.
Well, so are you doing it or no? I'm gonna learn about that. I'm gonna be in that situation. So,
Because it becomes, are you not a landlord, rental property? Rental insurance, a lot of things go into that. I didn't want to pick it, because it all that's right, so.
yeah.
So it's one that would get added on if I needed additional.
Yeah.
I think the one that has fun. But
Yeah.
until most people, like, I still only recommend it to anybody I would talk to it. Recommend. Maybe we could add, but there's not, I don't like I have, and I've done this one.
Make something new,
Yeah. Never. Makes- I'm not a. Outright leases for.
Yeah. I don't like this.
I thought I had, I thought my contracts. Not at all. I just
Yeah.
choose to, like,
Right.
certain things that are doable, it's not advisable.
Got it. I got to meet Terry. Is it Hardman? Herman.
Yeah. Sweetie.
Yeah, I met her at a house and my client actually wanted to put in a bid on the house, but the, my client, best friend-in-law, who had more opinions than what's the guy, Dalai Lama. I mean, she was, she was so opinionated. So Terry standing there, Terry, not Terry, client, it's the friend. Terry standing, and she goes, so how old is, now this is not even virus, how old is the unit? So Terry goes, well, it's whatever, the age was 5 years or something. No, no, this is a much older unit. No, no. You're not even buying the property. Because she's at all that age that, you know, it's kind of like, I'm 60 and I know everything about everybody. I call her a biddy, but she's a typical biddy. She just has, oh, it was just so much. I was just like, stop all this. You're killing. And I had to have a conversation with my friend. And then she, this is the wrong age. We go to the house. Right. That's going to put us in a negative deficit. And we're trying to get it over. Like, she needs to just settle that. I mean, Terry knew I was mad because we both kind of looked at each other and just laughed. But I was just like, oh my gosh. Yeah.
It's an older unit, get a whole warranty.
Right.
During the closing process, 39-year-old air conditioner. Still works.
Doesn't mean, because it's at the end of its life, means it's dead. It doesn't mean that.
When everybody put me up, that's in my life.
Yeah, exactly. When I'm 80, it doesn't mean I'm at the end of my life. It just means I'm old.
Yeah. Oh. It's like the dad inspector, it's always fun. But then again, I mean, I even brought my dad when I was thinking about buying a house. Like, I think this house is a bad idea. It's a really old farmhouse. I love the idea of it, but I kind of wanted to be talked out of it. But I wasn't going to listen to my husband because we're a realtor. So it's not from my dad. I knew my dad would tell me the truth.
Yeah.
And he did. It's like, Jim, what the hell are you thinking of?
So you didn't buy it.
I didn't buy it. Because you could literally stick a screwdriver in the foundation. It was a wood foundation, literally a tree.
Lord.
They last forever, but this one did because it wasn't built correctly.
That's the one thing I miss about my daddy. He was a Renaissance man. He knew everything about, like, he was a workman. He worked with his hands and, gosh, he was good and stuff like that. I miss that so much.
Everybody had like 4 in my life from my dad.
It was a hard time.
This one was maybe that.
Yeah. Well, that's exactly.
I do my
I've never
best,
made a
but
man
yeah.
that even come close to my dad's abilities as far as from a handy standpoint or, yeah. It's just, nobody's ever been able to hold it.
But we still have my dad. It's to retire the end of July.
I just lost my neighbor, who was my adopted dad, on Thursday. He just passed away suddenly. And he kind of took me under his wing when I moved to Ohio and took care of the sweetest man you've ever met in your life. Never complained about, everything was always fine. Always had a smile on his face. Drove himself to the ER, had a massive heart attack. Was mowing his lawn. The day before. Right, that's, yeah, I agree. He didn't suffer, and I don't think he would have been good as a, like a sick patient, you know what I mean? You know, he wouldn't have done that well, so.
Yeah, so sometimes it is a blessing. So my mom died suddenly, I had to sleep, but she was mentally ill and suffered for years and years and years.
Really?
All of that, and tried to sleep, so. And I felt guilty, I was afraid to die quickly, and I thought, there's something I know.
Yeah, yeah.
And then I felt guilty. So they were like, for a couple of years, basically wishing my mom dead, you know. And then it's amazing things we can do to ourselves.
I know, we do those things to ourselves.
Morning, we want to get started on time. Your agenda plan, what we got in. Is this an hour?
That's our goal. We're
Okay.
trying to test it out timing, so we may go slightly over. But I'm gonna do my best to keep it to an hour, because that is what it was intended to be. But I've not done it live in front of a class.
Okay.
So if I stick to my timing and, but I don't want to discourage questions, because that's the idea, is to see what things that I might not have known you guys have questions.
All right, love you.
So I've talked to a few different trainers to see what kind of things people make mistakes on, and I used to be a manager, so I know what kind of things people make mistakes on, so I had to correct them. So
you'd be great to teach this.
yeah, we're hoping that we caught it, but I want to make sure that I'm not missing anything that may confuse you guys as well.
Okay.
Did you guys hear the fun news this morning?
What?
Read the RAGC in the newsletter?
No.
Brand new contract.
Oh, no.
Between Dayton and Cincinnati, they've agreed on a new contract.
Is that a good thing?
Well, we will have to fight with the Dayton agency as ours, and Dayton will fight with us.
Oh,
to
so
use
it'll
theirs.
all be under the same.
It'll all be the same contract.
Nice. Tell me what the deal is with the reciprocity. Why did that go away?
For Kentucky and Ohio, because our laws, the licensing laws, they were too different.
Okay.
So, but now they've been able to come into enough of agreement with the reciprocity to happen.
Oh, it can?
Now, yes,
When's
that
it?
was in the newsletter today too. Read our newsletter, people.
I don't read them.
It came, look at the one, it came out like 4 a.m. this morning. I was up, I read it, but it came.
So what does that mean? Does that mean it's
It'll
back
be
in action?
easier to get for Kentucky and Ohio to agree on licensing. They exchanges, you'll be able to, if your license is either, it'll be easier to get the other.
But the whole process come right
Yeah.
here.
what are the requirements now?
I don't know.
Yeah.
It just, another, it was just announced today, that we're working it out to make sure there's a
Okay,
process.
good. Because I went to study in Kentucky and then right before I wrote it, I couldn't take it because originally I only had to take the law, right? We had to take the law side. And I
I
thought,
would
no,
say, keep an eye on the newsletters
Okay.
and keep it, it should be
Okay.
easier.
that's good.
Now, if they just do it in Indiana, it's like it's take 90 hours, so I'm gonna get my Indiana license.
Oh, wow.
It's 90 full hours.
Indiana?
There's no reciprocity between Ohio and
Really?
Indiana. Yeah.
Why? That used to be,
'Cause they don't
wasn't
like each
there
other.
reciprocity?
Yeah, no, because Indiana is all brokers. Indiana does not have agents, they are all brokers.
Oh. They don't have agents? I didn't know that.
It's all broker level licensing. Fun things. Pulled all kinds of good information.
Man, good. I'm good.
Is Jennifer Shields still here? Oh, told you. Oh, you're Jennifer? Okay, I swear I looked at your picture. Maybe you're so, I think your hair was down in your picture. I'm sorry.
I look so much
You don't
better.
need to cut it.
That is really me, and it's not airbrushed or
No, your hair was down.
anything. No, it's fine.
There are some agents that just do too much.
No. I look better.
I think y'all all the time. My hair's up and my mom's like, "Oh, look at your picture." I'm like, sorry, I took my hair back. A lot of hair. It gets hot sometimes.
Nice to meet you.
Did you want to say a few words before we get started? I was told you wanted to.
Sure. Sure.
Hey.
How you doing?
How you doing, my new buddy?
I'll let Emily speak.
I just love the team. I love it. The funniest thing that my buyer, like, he's a man. I said, no, you couldn't handle it. That's awesome. He's like, one more morning. Yeah. And I was like, am I in for a lender? And, no,
That's funny.
Oh,
Angela is the one that said.
it was the shield. I'm sure it did. His wife probably or something, you know.
It's a nice.
Yeah. But what a great system, you know.
We are a system.
And then the most recent couple, Ian and Lauren, I sent you all, they are so excited about seeing this tonight.
Oh, really? What do you
They are
see?
freaking so excited.
His last name's Bryce, right?
Did we get one of these? It is.
You're welcome. We may have to read
They're so nice.
Yeah. Shouldn't be too complicated, but.
It's in their price range.
All right, if I can get everybody's attention, please. Everybody that enjoyed lunch, can we give a big thank you to Jennifer Shield? Did I say that right? You guys are really good folks.
Yeah, so, I won't take a lot of time, but I know most of are in here, so you've all seen me. So I'm going to, just describe a recent transaction we did with Emily and also a pre-approval that we did with Emily, because I think that, like, we can all talk about what products we offer, but honestly, we're going to offer as lenders a lot of the same products, so that's really not why you choose someone. Alex is buying a house, so we're working with Alex. Emily's got one under contract, and we pre-approved a buyer recently. Her client called and asked her if she sends them a candle, because we send candles out when they get a contract, so we make you look good, right? And for like the clients that we gave the pre-approval, you saw all the options we gave them. We turned it around really quickly, and then they're going to see a house tonight. And then once we get the contract, Alex can attest that we turned it into an ITP quickly, and we order appraisal and title, and so it's a system that's repetitive. It's not fancy, it's dependable. That's what you want. You want a lender that is consistent, has resources, has bandwidth to make it the same every time. It's not like, well, I'm here right now, so I can't work on a contract, so I'll work on it tomorrow. My team is here, or my team's in the office, and things just keep moving. And that's really what you want when you're doing business with somebody, it's not the person. I love to get the business because you like me, but you also need to understand you're not choosing me, you're choosing a process, a system. And everything you learn at KW teaches you everything is a system, everything is a process, and you get consistent results. So I really hope that you think about that and realize that like there's a lot of loan officers that come and they speak to you and they sound great, and I'm sure you like them, and that's wonderful. You should like who you work with. You should also be looking at it as a business and who is the most prepared, educated, and capable to get your closing completed, because you're choosing business, you're not choosing people. I think that's really.
And I'll attest to that, because I had a contract last year that, we should have just stayed with Jennifer, and we ended up having a bad situation with the vendor that made promises that they couldn't commit to. So I'll never make that mistake again, once that goes bad.
Yeah. So anyway, that's just my soapbox. I feel like it's hard to kind of stand out sometimes in the world of social media, because everyone seems the same, and everything is shiny and it's all this kind of extra dressing on things. And I used to laugh and say, like, I'm the meat and potatoes lender. Like, every time it's the same. We close on time, we get it closed, we communicate. There's just a system that sets you free, from drama. I don't know.
That's
Well, that's with like content interviews today, he was very nice, talked to me about my process and stuff, which I really liked. I was just driving and any questions to me, like let me explain everything, but not that I wasn't like complicated or anything, but it's nice to have them. And then you called Ashley too after we got under contract.
Yeah.
I didn't think it, so I thought that was.
I did call Ashley.
Yeah.
And then I forwarded to you the title company information this morning, so that you know who your title company worked with, like vet anyone else, because you wouldn't know what to ask.
Yeah.
Once you go through it a couple times, you're like, this does feel very professional and systematized. So
Honestly, even I've had our people on the side of the road. Like a couple of times, on the same street. But no, she does a great job, and they really think outside the box, especially when you've got people that may be in difficult situations to get through. They have a lot of different things that they can look at.
thank you. Yeah. Shout out to everyone in here. I know your business is so hard, and I know it's really challenging to get a client. Being married to a real estate agent, I definitely see both sides. So I think it's just kind of being aware of what it takes for you to get to the point to refer someone, and then how important it is that we take the ball and run with it from there. Because it's like you've worked your butt off to get someone to finally get through, and then the lender kind of makes you look average. That's not really fair, It's a lot harder to get the client than it is to take care of the client.
Totally agree. It's gotta be working.
It's a win-win, yeah.
Thank you for bringing lunch today.
Yeah, of course.
I forgot that was happening, so I was like, yay, I don't have to pack today.
Awesome.
Well, welcome, everybody. I'm gonna go through and have you guys all introduce yourselves. I try to refer to people by name because I'm really, really bad at names. So I'm just gonna have everybody kind of introduce themselves to me so I can try to remember. Jennifer, I will remember because it's my name. And I know Becky already. So you guys just go through and do that. In case you guys don't know each other too. I mean, I know it's a big office, so if you guys don't mind real quick, just first name is fine.
I'm Emily.
Angela. Yeah, Angela's on my team. I didn't really introduce you guys properly, but I feel like some of you know Angela, so.
We all know Becky.
Alex.
Alex.
William.
And I know William too, but. Pardon? Tanner, all right. I know your name, Carney. I don't know if I've ever actually met you though. It's a unique name. All right, so welcome to Addendums. I know Jeff said Addendums, but it's really Addendums, clauses, and contingencies to the RAGC purchase contract. I am Jennifer Baldwin. So you see, I've done a lot. I've been doing this 16 years. I've gotten a lot of, that's just the list of recent things that I've done. But I've been a manager. I have sold real estate. I head up the professional development committee this year. I do a lot of stuff because I like what I do. I enjoy teaching. I enjoy being a part of the real estate world. So in return, I wanted to give back. So this is how I'm going to give back. So I'm going to show you guys things that I have learned about mistakes that agents make that make your guys' lives harder if you don't do it right the first time. So we're going to try to alleviate that for you. Because really these things, if you take it step by step and break it down, they're very simple, very straightforward. I'm going to try to make your life easier. That's my goal. Oh yeah, this is my horse Bahara. So most of my professional pictures I have done involve my horses because that is a big part of my life. If I'm not here, I'm with my family or with my horses or lifting weights. Depends on the day. That's my stress relief time.
That's a beautiful.
I've got an amazing photographer. If you guys ever want it, she's not cheap, but professional hair, makeup, pictures, it's amazing. Absolutely love her.
Yeah, I did pictures.
My pictures, my
Yes.
headshot.
We had somebody come in the office. She's the one that did that picture. It's so much fun to get like made up. I mean, I had like fake eyelashes in this picture.
Yeah, I
so
did too. Yeah.
everything
Full
is
makeup,
just
everything.
like accentuated, which is bad because then later, like you don't wear fake eyelashes
And
every day.
I'll never look that good in real life, but it's fun.
Well, that's my fear. Like, I'm like, I feel like now when I walk in places, people look and they're like, oh yeah, glamour shot. I'm like, no, it's really me.
Just to be clear, I know that all these forms come, did you just walk in? What's your name, sir? Reese, nice to meet you. There you go. Oh, and just to be clear too, a lot of you haven't met me. I am new to Keller Williams. I've only been here since July. 16 years in real estate, but I work for the Chabris Group. So you don't see me in here often, but I have been here since July. Just to be clear, all of these forms come directly from REGC. So I know some individual teams, that type of thing, may use slightly different forms. These are all REGC. Yes, Freddie. I'm sorry. Oh, you didn't get one of this? Oh shoot, we are out. Yeah, if you don't mind, you could ask Jenna Madel, make the printouts. She should be able to just print out some additional ones. We'll get you one momentarily. I didn't realize you didn't get. How did you not get one? Just trying to hand them out as people came in. I don't know how I didn't notice you. That's a little hard. Sorry, we'll put one more thing up there. All right. So these are forms directly from it. I know a lot of teams and stuff will modify these forms slightly. Thank you. To their own needs, but these are going to be directly from our AGC. All of your digital software companies should upload these directly. I know you guys are switching over to DocuSign, so they should be uploading those directly for you. So you shouldn't be any need to worry about that.
Are you doing it with Peter Spring too?
No, we are sticking with Dotloop at the Chabris. I just learned Dotloop. I did not want to switch again. So that is the link directly to our AGC's form. So if you ever want to download them directly to have them in another form, that's how you get to them directly. All right, so we're going to jump right in. So we're going to start with the first one that we normally use, basic addendum. This is our most basic form. This is an addendum that we can use for a variety of reasons. When do we use it? Pretty much any time. This addendum can apply when you're writing a contract, when you're already under contract to change something. Why do we use it? Because something in the contract doesn't match what our clients want. Pretty straightforward. This is probably the easiest one to go through. One to start with it because it's very straightforward. First thing you're going to do, this is how I'm going to kind of call out each one. It won't always be on the same page, but I'm going to take parts of the contract, make them bigger so we can go through them in more detail. On these, always make sure you put a number on these. Because if there's more than one, you want to make sure they're numbered so you understand that there is more than one company. You don't put one of however many, but you got to number them in case you do end up doing more than one. On here, always make sure that is fully filled out. And please don't tell me you don't know the seller's name. If you don't know how to look it up on the auditor's site, please talk to someone in the training department. You should know how to do that. Full property address. Make sure you have the full address on there because there's too many properties that overlap. If you want to be very particular, you can put the parcel number on as well. Sorry. It's like the highlight needs to be darker apparently. So it says right there, they further agree to whatever you want them to agree to. So that's the whole purpose of this contract. What are we going to agree to? When you do it, be very detailed, but very concise. The number one concern on this part, do not practice law. We are not attorneys. We are not writing law. You have any questions on how to write it? RAGC gives you samples. Go on their website, they give you sample clauses that you can use that are written by attorneys. You can use their clauses. If you're not sure, have a manager, have somebody above you review it before you use it. Your best bet, keep it simple. Don't add extra words, don't try to use legal jargon that you don't truly understand. Anytime you add an addendum to a contract, this is page 8 of your purchase contract, that may change. They issued a new purchase contract. It'll be coming out. You all get to be trained on that one. That was announced this morning. Anytime you add an addendum to a contract, it has to be noted on page 8 of your purchase contract that there is now an addendum to that contract. You guys know that?
You have to note it and then both parties initial, right? On the contract.
I always do, yeah.
I think that's really important, but beware, that's gonna cause some issues in lending.
But the
because
lender
there's
will
a
want a
lot of
copy of that addendum.
times I don't wanna know what the addendum says.
We-
And if you write an addendum, make sure that you understand, somebody's gonna read that. And if you say in lieu of repairs, or because of this thing, we're doing this, the underwriter, I mean, it's kind of like less is more, but then that's gonna kind of stink because there's a lot of
Yeah,
times
it
I'm saying,
becomes a
just don't
question
send me
like
that
that,
addendum.
yes. Be talked to, that's a question I can't answer, but it legally, if there's an addendum to a contract, it has to be made part of a contract. That is the.
And I
correct
think
answer.
that's correct.
Yeah.
We've had the loophole for a while, but it's.
I know.
Do that.
I know, and I can't say not to do it because that would not be the correct answer to use. And please, in all situations, make sure both parties sign it. It's not legally binding if both parties don't sign it. Yes, I know that that's gonna have to be dark. It looks dark on my computer, but bottom right hand side, make sure everything is signed. You should. That is the overall correct way to do it, yes. Do I do it every time? No. I don't. I will openly admit that I do not do it every
That's
time.
how we're setting the addendum with the contract.
No. It should be noted on the original contract.
So if I sent a defect notice and added an addendum to it,
No, not technically. Defect notice is separate because that's a notice, not an addendum. Yeah. Yeah. Good point there. So next
So
thing,
is an addendum to the defect notice, that does not need to be.
it's not technically an addendum. to the defect notice.
It's just, I guess it's just
Yeah.
continuation. Okay.
There's a party that needed one.
Yeah.
I think everybody else, does everybody else have one? Okay. Thank you, Jenna. All right, any other questions on the addendum? Those are good questions. I know it seems weird, like, I know no one goes back and adds that onto the purchase contract. I know that, but that is the correct answer, is it should be noted on the purchase contract that there is an addendum to the purchase contract. Yes,
If this one, or just the second, they update the one.
I know.
Okay.
I know.
I was
And they
just-
actually updated it yesterday.
I was just getting.
Yes, it's not updated on the printout because
Yeah,
this was
they're-
already.
They're red.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the defect notice I used last week, the addendum I used last week did not look like this, so.
This is directly from RAG's website, so I don't know where you got your addendum from.
From Baldwin,
Okay.
but maybe I need to. Before
You can look at the top and see when it was revised last. So these were pulled off this week from RAG's website. All right, so this is my favorite one. So this is where you will need those scraps of paper. You're gonna do a little math. Escalation addendums. Who likes these?
I hate.
So I'm gonna teach you how these work, but what I'm also gonna teach you is number one, if you're not comfortable with them as a listing agent, just tell people you won't accept them. You are allowed to do that. You do not have to accept an escalation addendum.
Do we need to state that in the notes, or can we just say that as it comes?
As a listing agent, I have stated that I will not accept them, because I have sellers, like, I don't wanna mess with it, I don't understand them, I don't wanna mess with them. So we have done that. It has to be at your seller's decision, it's not your decision.
Right.
If you're not comfortable with it, let your seller know, let them know that you don't wanna use them, and why you don't wanna use them, make sure they're okay with that. It is your right as a listing agent not to do that.
Do you think you hurt yourself by not accepting them?
Do you know? I don't know.
I think so.
Do you hurt yourself
I mean,
writing one
you're
to
gonna
an
get a
agent
higher
that doesn't
price.
understand how to use them? Do you actually know if they properly escalated if you send one? There's agents I know I've stepped onto that I swear do not understand what they did. So that's something I would definitely look into it because it's escalation addendums are tricky. They're not, but some agents don't understand them. And the new update they did to it is going to confuse a lot of agents.
Oh. And then.
So I can tell you, I reached out to Ann Upton. I reached out to our trainer at TCG. I reached out to a previous trainer that I worked with. Every single one of them gave me a different answer about the change that they just made to the escalation addendum. So fun times. So escalation addendum, when do we use it? What is the escalation amount? What's it cap? What's the net offer? And how do we calculate it? We're gonna go over all four of those things. Ready for this? All right. I'm gonna break it down as easy as I can. So first paragraph, what is an escalation of a purchase price? So there's three things that we're gonna talk about. The net offer, the escalation amount, and the cap. So what is a bona fide offer? Bona fide offer means another offer that the seller receives that is fully signed and fully executable. So that means it's a real offer. It has a pre-approval. It's got everything to go with it. That is an offer that they could potentially accept and move forward with. Make sense? Easy enough. So in order for order to use an escalation addendum, we have to have a couple of things. There has to be more than one offer. I got a new prescription recently and I can't read my own handwriting without this. And the other offer has to exceed the buyer's net offer. So an escalation addendum cannot go into effect unless the other offer is higher than the buyer's net offer. Does that make sense?
No.
Yes.
Can you do it? Say an example, like.
So you have two offers. Okay. One's for 200,000. The other one's for 100,000. So if the 200,000 one has an escalation clause up to 250, that doesn't go into effect if the other offers for 100,000. Okay. I know that's a dramatic difference, but does that make sense? Yeah. Okay. Yes.
Is that just a simple question to know when it's going to affect?
Yeah, that's just explaining why sometimes an escalation addendum will never be used if there's still another offer that is high enough to make that escalation addendum matter.
So they put in a contract and then if they get a second one day after, you can then go back to an escalation clause with that, since there was the install that way.
You could. I've never had somebody add an escalation clause after the fact.
Yeah.
You usually would submit it with the original offer.
When it's, but you know that it's a multiple offers case, so that's what you like.
That's when most people use them. Because the buyer does not want to submit a high offer to start with, but they're like, well, if someone else is offering it, I'll offer this much more. But we'll go through that in a little bit more detail. So you do have to have more than one offer for an escalation clause to go into effect. Does that make sense now? All right. So we've got three offers in here. So we have an escalation clause. We have to know, it's always a little confusing, but once we get into it, it'll make more sense, I promise. So you have to figure out the net offer, you have to figure out the escalation amount, you have to figure out the cap. So we're gonna leave it at that, and then I'm gonna walk you through step by step what each of those. I think it makes more sense if we break it apart than we try to go through it all at once, okay? The first thing we're gonna figure out is what the escalation amount is gonna be. So your client's gonna make an offer. They're gonna say, this is the amount I wanna offer.
Let's say the house is going for 100,000.
Okay, house is going for 100,000. I'm gonna offer 100,000, and I will offer $1,000 over every other offer up to a certain amount. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, so that $1,000 is the escalation amount. Okay, does that make sense to everybody? The next thing we're gonna talk about, I'm skipping that offer because that's a little bit more complicated. So I'm gonna go to the easy things first. Your cap. So that is the max amount that person's gonna offer, okay? So I'm gonna offer $1,000, start at 100,000, that's my base offer. $1,000 over any other offer, I'm capping at 150,000. So that is my cap, I will not offer anything over that. Make sense? That all calculate for everybody? All right, so that's pretty makes sense, easy enough, right?
And the paper Jenna just gave you is the new one that came out today.
Yeah.
Just
And the orange part is the only change that was made. All right, so we're gonna calculate a net offer, okay? So a net offer means the purchase price for real estate minus any seller-based contributions. This is the old wording, which is in your packet. So this was what I had up here. It should buyer compensation be taken into account when you're doing a net offer. That was the question I was going to ask you guys, but as of yesterday, they answered my question. Yes, you do have to take buyer compensation into account when you're doing a net offer or a net offer. So that was the big change, you guys. Makes sense. The net offer, the buyer expenses being paid out, so it has to be taken into account. Make sense? Any questions on what's included in a net offer? So you guys all do net sheets for your sellers, right? The only thing that we're not putting on there is our compensation as a listing agent and the taxes, transfer taxes, stuff like that. That's not going on there, but anything paid on behalf of the buyer is going on there. Make sense? Okay, so get your things out. We're going to do a couple scenarios for you. Okay, got offer A and offer B. That's your offer A. Offer of $475. Seller paid closing costs of $5,000. Yes, it still exists even in this market. I got more than that for my 2 buyers who are currently under contract. No home warranty. Title insurance is being paid by the buyer. And buyer agent compensation is being paid by the buyer. Offer B, $485,000. No seller paid closing costs. Home warranty of $700. Seller is contributing $300 towards title insurance and paying $15,000 for the buyer agent compensation. To figure out those 2 net offers. I was really nice. The 700 and 300 makes 1,000. I could have been more mean with those calculations.
Yeah, really, right?
I can't.
485 is off the beat. Yeah, I know. I think I need to do.
No, I just probably need glasses.
I do not got distance vision and no close vision. There's either read street signs or be able to read close up, and I decided reading street signs is important. I can use glasses when I need to read close up. All right, everybody got those? Does anybody want to share what they came up with? Yeah, paid by, I should clarify that. Yes, buyer agent compensation paid by seller. Yes, correct. Thank you.
A is 70,000.
Yeah, does anybody want to share which one's a better offer? Carney says offer A. Is that what everybody came up with?
Yeah.
So even though it started off lower, the net offer for offer A is a little bit higher. Is that what everybody came up with?
Yeah, I would ask who the lender is on A or B and choose on that. I'm damn serious.
Like being that close, there's some lenders that I would talk to my seller like, there is a risk.
And the agent, I would ask who's the agent on A and who's on B. And then be like, all right, if the agent's good and the lender's good, we're going with, I mean, seriously, the lower offer is better.
Yeah, sometimes you never know, but that's that offer wise, because we're talking about doing escalation clauses on which one, where we're escalating, because that could make a difference too. Make sense? Any questions on that? Yeah. So we're breaking it down. So now we've got net offer. So even if we had 10 of these, we know how to figure out what the net offer of every offer that we've received. Right? And that's why when you get multiple escalation clauses, the easiest way to handle it is break it down one by one. Don't look at it as every single offer you have. But look at it as these are the individual offers I have. Because if you try to look at it as a big picture, you're gonna blow your mind. You're not gonna be able to do it. One by one, we'll figure it out. Yes.
You know, these are part of the office that somebody's coming back. Won't use that much.
We're assuming that every offer we have has escalation clause. Because before we can decide which offer is the best, so if we have, say we've got 5 offers with escalation and 5 without, we already know, we can figure out the net offer for all of them. Then we're going to set those aside because then we're going to look at the ones with escalation clauses. So we've got to escalate those to see how they compare with the ones that aren't escalating. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. Don't want to get into that too much because we're focused on the escalation. All right. So our next question is gonna be, how do we calculate an escalation cost? There's a couple different ways to do this. The second method I'm gonna show you is gonna be more of an engineer's mind. The first one's gonna be just a basic calculation. So this one is straight off. I blocked out the bottom because I shows you how to do it. This one is straight out of your packet. If you can't read it up here, it is actually in the escalation clause, the example, and there is the example we're gonna use. I figured why make something up, I'll just use their example. So you got offer A, the net offer is 100,000. Escalation is $1,000 up to 150,000. Offer B, net is 100,000. Escalation is $1,000 up to 145,000. Offer C, net is 100,000. Escalation $1,000 up to 140,000. So I'd like you guys to figure out is what is the full escalation of all three of those offers.
Is the highest, and 140 is the lowest.
Now, you can't escalate straight up to the highest escalation because escalations have to push one another up.
140, 146.
Read the directions on what it says. So each number has to escalate the previous one up. So you have one that's starting at 100. So 100 pushes the next one up to 101, then up to 102. So you have to ask, something has to push that next one up, right? So basic way to think of it is what is the lowest one, lowest cut? 140. So all of those push up to 140 based on that. So then the one that's at 140, that one cuts at 140, right? So then the next one, what's the next highest one?
145.
So that one, that caps at 145. It can't go above there. So that pushes itself up to 145. No, the next one pushes itself up to 145. So what does buyer A push up to? No.
46.
It pushes 1,000 over the next highest offer.
146.
Yeah.
Gotcha. You're not actually.
Because they're not saying they offer 150, they offered $1,000 over the next highest offer. So they cap.
Obviously.
They
based on
cap
how
at
high
one.
they go, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Do you see why it's confusing for people? Because they are willing to pay 150, but only if someone else was willing to pay 149.
Yeah.
Make sense?
You're not allowed to ask them to go 150 if it's.
There is one method to escalation clauses. You know that person was willing to pay 150. You can say, we're going to get rid of the escalation clause. Instead, we're going to counter you at 150.
Gotcha.
Get rid of the escalation clause. It's a clean counter. Thing is, they can say no to the counter. You could lose it completely. That is one method. So just throwing that out there. I've done that too, but sometimes you just don't want to mess with the escalation. So make sense?
Yeah.
Do you see why, especially an agent that doesn't bother to come in and take these types of trainings, can get very confused if they have multiple ones escalating, and especially if they're not as clean as these. Those are very clean, easy offers. Yes, thank you.
What do you recommend to people as far as what's the most effective amounts to put in there? Because I know I personally don't see $1,000 over as being super effective, because then you can look at other terms, but in your.
I would say I would never put 1,000. I put 1,100. I put 1,500.
That's what I always say.
I put some odd number that is not gonna be evening out at 150. What if you have two that are escalating to 150? If yours was 1,100, then you're 150,100 or 150,500.
So we run numbers for people, and like they'll tell me, oh, I'm gonna offer whatever, and I always go, I'll add like 100. I'm like, what about 100 more or 500? And they're like, that's a good idea. I'm gonna tell my agent that. I'm like, it needs to stand out.
Yeah, and that's what I would recommend is, or if you're in the 450, 700,000 range, make it $5,000. I mean, come on, people, it's be reasonable. I mean, in this price range, 1,000 makes sense. Look at your price range. Look, talk to your buyer. Like, if it was your property, what would you really be willing to go up? Where are you really needing to be? And I would make it an odd number. I would not cap it an even 200,000 or 600,000, 603,000. Something that would probably throw off another party making an offer. Because a lot of times that's what things are going on, is these little bits. And then nothing else is going to tell your buyer you're creative and you're trying to think outside the box to get something done. Make sense? I told you I'd give you another method. I'm not gonna go hard into this. I like graphs. So if you kind of look at this, it just kind of shows how it pushes it up. See, the bottom one runs out of steam, next one goes higher, third one pushes past.
Oh, gotcha.
That's how my brain works. So it's another method that people use to do it. Yeah.
Just keep us.
Make sense? So that's probably the most complicated one, honestly. So that's why I got in here early before your break today.
That was smart to do that.
Did you guys feel like now if you receive one or you're gonna write one, you got a little bit better feel for that? Any particular questions? Not really getting into the weeds on this. I think this is one you gotta kind of look at and then see. Next time you do it, I think you know what you need to do. You need to know what they're gonna escalate, you need to know what their cap is, you need to know how to figure out a net offer. Y'all got that. Yes, Chris.
I have a question.
Hold on, he had his hand up first.
So if you're on the seller side, they're offering it, I'm assuming you want to tell the price of what could happen. Now we want to go to 250,000, not penny more, okay, and tell them like, oh, that's inside, I think their offer says, you don't want this way, this much offer, 250 for your offer. That's what you tell them, like, at the beginning or wait till it happens.
Honestly, I mean,
It might happen, might not.
I would tell a seller like escalation clauses can be confusing to inexperienced agents. I know what I'm doing and I'm happy to handle it if we get one and we can make it happen because it could net you an extra $3,000 in your pocket that another agent couldn't. I'm happy to handle them. I'm not as happy to write them depending on what the agent has to list of. Just because I do worry about whether or not that agent will properly. I've had them missing. So.
Oh, you mean from the buyer to the seller?
Yeah, if I'm the buyer's agent, I'm more hesitant.
Sounds like, okay, we're not a regional.
Yeah, no, and it's not insulting another agent, it just, it's
Pro con,
experience.
right.
Well, aren't you're allowed to ask for proof with the point out.
100%, yes.
And if you find, like, if you.
That actually,
Yeah. You could be like, no, you miscalculated, this is what you really paid.
yeah, they have to show that there was another offer and they have to provide proof of that other offer.
You have to do that once.
Yes, it is.
Every time they
Yeah,
go up, right?
no,
No.
they just have to show it at the end.
Okay.
They have to show the offer that pushed your offer to what the final offer is.
I had an agent once change it, blacked out.
Mm. All right, ready to move on? Where are the other ones will be easier? So, they really will. This is my favorite one. This is a new one. You ever heard of appraisal gap addendums 5 years ago? Well, actually, probably was about 5 years ago now. They probably started about 5 years ago, 2020, give or take, 19, probably, somewhere around that. I don't know, when was this one put out? I can't see that one. 2023 is when it became official. I think we talked about it before then. This is when the board actually issued it. All right, everybody dealt with these in some way, shape, or form at some point in their life?
Actually, I have not.
All right, I've never seen someone actually give me the correct form. I've had it handwritten on contracts. Scary, scary once we get through this form. All right, so we're gonna talk about what it means, the documentation that's needed, and how to handle it. Pretty straightforward, so. I'm supposed to be reading from here because I have all my notes on. Bad habit of looking at the board. All right, so what is an appraisal gap addendum? So there's two things that are highlighted on here. So twice they say it's due to basically, it is changing everything about what the appraisal value is. So if the it is changing the rights for what happens if the appraisal comes in undervalued. So and it's highlighted on the top and on the bottom. So when they repeat things in an addendum, it means it's really important to pay attention. All right, so we're going to do a definition. Everybody knows what appraisal value is, or appraised value is, correct? Is what the appraiser says your house is worth. Is that a fact or is that an opinion? It's all opinion, but unfortunately, it's an opinion that goes to the bank.
That becomes a factor.
And so an appraisal gap, do we know what that is? The difference between the appraised value and the sale price that was agreed upon. Pretty straightforward. And a buyer's appraisal gap payment is what the amount of money that the buyer is willing to pay to make up for the difference between the appraised value and the sale price. Pretty crazy, huh? Told me that when I got my real estate license. What a laugh. This buyer's market back then. Okay. Anybody in here actually experienced the buyer's market? Ooh, whole nother ballgame. Put someone in your car and see 12 houses in a day, you can plan that a week ahead. It's crazy.
So on the contract, when you decide to do an appraisal gap,
Hold on, I'm getting you the stuff. Hold on, Linder. I'm gonna cover you, don't worry, I promise.
make sure you
I know, it's in there. It's actually in there. People use this addendum. It says it. So always remember, fully clean out, or you okay, Becky? You okay?
Yeah.
Okay. Like, I'm gonna talk really loud, sorry. Make sure you fully fill out everything about the property. This is very important thing. Make sure you're doing it for the right one. This one does actually ask for parcel number. I don't know what all of our addendums don't. So make sure that is fully filled out. All right, financial commitment. This is what our lenders like to hear. We talk about financial commitment. So first, how much money are they willing to put up front? How much money do they want to say that I am willing to pay this much in a difference on the appraisal? So easy enough to fill out, probably the hardest conversation you'll have with your client. Please don't do this when you're writing out the offer. This is something you should be discussing before you actually take your buyers out. If this is something that's got to be consideration in the areas you're looking, the market you're looking in, make sure you have this conversation ahead of time because you're going to need to be able to prove it before you put in this offer. So you're going to write out the amount and you're also going to write it in dollar amounts too. So make sure that some of y'all have really sloppy handwriting, so maybe you can write it twice. Next you're going to talk about is, sorry, I forgot where I was at. Sometimes I move too quick. All right, so next is going to talk about what you have to provide. So you have to provide written verification from that buyer's lender stating that they have the money available to pay that appraisal gap, plus their down payment, and whatever other funds they need for closing, things that have to be in the bank already, whatever they need, they have to be able to cover all of that. That has to be written from their lender. That understood? That is not a bank statement showing they have the amount of money because we don't know if that is already dedicated to down payment or other reserve funds that they have to have on hand. Makes sense?
Are you saying the lender has to write an additional
Yes.
letter or something with this?
Yes.
Okay.
And as a listing agent, if you have accepted one that does not have this, you put a big risk down on your seller for this. Seeing them handwritten onto a contract is the scariest thing I've seen. And I have seen them handwritten on the contract more than once as a manager. And that little section where it says other addenda onto a contract on page 8 of the purchase contract, I've got appraisal gaps written into there. This is a 2-page addendum, and they've condensed it into that.
So before they had the form, but
Yeah.
clause and it was, yeah, there weren't a lot of rules with it, but yes.
Does that make sense? Yeah.
Reading out, no, the dollar amount, like you're saying, to write out the word.
Yeah. So if they're gonna do 10,000, you write out TENTHOUSAND. Yeah, it's just to be sure you're very clear on what it is.
Like a check.
Yeah. You don't even have to, you don't have to write it in cursive if you all are not comfortable. I said, who's the youngest one in here? Probably you. If you don't want to write in cursive, it's okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So if the property sells for $100,000 and it appraises for $80,000, he's saying so for $10,000, so he'll pay $90,000. $90,000, right? Is that a good example to understand?
Okay, I'll do an example. The sale price is 100,000. The appraisal comes at, they offer an appraisal gap of 10,000. The appraisal comes in at 80,000. They are only willing to pay 90,000, so you still have a gap of 10,000. We're gonna show what you do in that situation.
Okay.
Okay. And we'll show also if it's 100,000, you agree to pay 10,000. If it comes in at 95,000, what you do in that situation. So make sense? All right. So that's what we're gonna do now. Here we go.
So is 3 calendar days fair for a lender to get that information back to you?
It should be. I mean, if the lender's done a pre-approval, they should have access to most financials. I mean, honestly, if I'm writing this, I want that ahead of time. I mean, that's to me, that's the same as having a pre-approval or proof of funds in hands. I don't want to wait on that. If they're putting an appraisal gap in there, I want it then. And I probably would require it as a listing agent. In that competitive a market, I'm not doing it. Sorry, lenders. I'm gonna keep you up at night looking for that stuff.
No, I mean, I'm thinking that I would provide it, and if you're writing the contract, you should be asking me.
Yeah, if
Can
I
they
know I'm
cover
using that, I'm gonna
this? And I
say,
would put it, I would update the letter to include it. I mean, I literally had somebody that escalated and he was CFO. And the thing is, you can't assume that your buyers understand what they're even agreeing to. You have to explain it to them just like you're doing. Because he didn't understand what he was actually agreeing to and called me the next morning.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah,
I'm
you're
gonna
gonna
say, don't have this as you're writing the contract. This is a discussion before you do
Right.
it. Yes.
That was kind of my question.
Yeah, because this is a lot of information for someone to take in.
And
It's
this
an
is someone
11-page purchase contract. Please talk about this ahead of time, please.
And also, yeah, your lender can help, like, to have this discussion.
Exactly, yeah.
They don't have to like, that's a conversation, like, hey, do you want to kind of go into this?
And depending on the market you're in, some markets don't call for this, other markets do.
So if you're going into that.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, so this is how you handle it. So these are gonna be your procedures, okay? You're under contract, they've agreed to whatever appraisal gap they've agreed to, the appraisal comes in. So if the appraisal gap payment is greater or equal to the purchase price, I'm skipping ahead there. The buyer shall pay what the required portion of the buyer's appraisal gap payment at the time of closing up to the purchase price. So if the gap is equal to or less than what they're willing to pay. So $100,000 purchase price, the appraisal comes in at $95,000. The buyer would be required to pay $5,000. If they agree, sorry, let me try that again. $100,000 purchase price, they agreed to an appraisal gap of $10,000. The appraisal comes in at $95,000. They have to pay $5,000 in appraisal gap. Make sense? Yep. Sorry, that's a lot of numbers. Everybody agree with that? Yep. All right, that's easy enough. They don't have to pay the whole thing just because they were willing.
Right, so they agree now. Yeah.
Okay, so if it's less than it, the easiest way to look at that is we're back in appraisal negotiations. $100,000. They agree to pay $10,000 of it. The appraisal comes in at $80,000. So now they're willing to pay up to $90,000 for that house. There's still a $10,000 gap. So now we're back in negotiations on that appraisal. Now the seller and the buyer have to renegotiate what they're willing to do. So it all goes back to basically what we would have done any other time that there was a difference in appraisal value. They have to renegotiate. Now, could that buyer agree to pay $10,000 more with an updated letter from their lender? They could. Could the seller agree to drop the price? They could. Whatever they would agree to, just like a normal appraisal negotiation. Make sense? Yep. Yes.
Is that not a thing that they could just like finance for that 10,000? Or is that still?
No, because it did not appraise for that value.
Appraisal value or sales price, whatever is less.
Yeah.
Gotcha, so that's. they're only gonna
Appraisal
loan-
is not, yeah.
they're only gonna-
Financing for more is not an option.
Gotcha. So you down into that. This is how
Yeah.
it should be. Gotcha.
You can't finance for more than what it appraises for.
But if they were gonna put 5% down, they could maybe put 3%.
And that's why I say talk to the lender because there may be other options. If they've got a 20% down payment, they may be able to do a 10% down payment and put that rest towards. Yeah, there's options. Yeah.
Another question I have is, if this happens, the latter, where the payment is less, would that mean another addendum, or would you have to, how would you, I know that you would obviously change the price, let's say they negotiate to bring the price down, the sellers do.
You have to do an addendum to the and change the price. Yeah. Just like you would anytime there'd be a price to the a price change. Yeah. So in here you do put how many days you would have to negotiate that if that does come up. Because you don't want it to end like go on forever. So makes sense? And several times in here, they say time is of the essence. Be sure that you make sure that you set your deadlines. I don't know how many times we tell you guys this. Set your deadlines. Deadlines are important. Make sure you know your deadlines. Always important. It does say in here several times, be sure that you understand that this is changing terms of the original contract, so make sure you understand this is overriding the original contract, but it doesn't change, it stays the same. It says that several times in here. Yes.
Would there be a difference between that you said they could drop the price, or would they have a choice as to whether they should drop the sales price per house, or if they would just take $10,000 per person that's closing?
Next, you cannot finance for more than what it appraises. Yeah. That's the lender. You cannot finance for more than what it appraises for. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about that. You cannot do it. All right. So just so you guys know, I'm realizing this is an 1.5 hour class. If you have to leave, I will not be insulted if you have a hard 1 o'clock stop. I understand it. I don't want to cut it short and cut things off, but if you have to leave, don't feel bad. Okay. I'm just giving you a heads up. I checked the time. There's no way I'm finishing this in 15 minutes.
Jennifer, did you have anything to add about yeah.
Do you like knowing all that's in there? Do you know that was all in there? About the, I think I need to get back a page to get to that. That all that was in there about the lender.
I don't, usually they'll tell me, but yeah, that's good. We need to make sure we're reading it.
I think it's awesome if that's all. But I can honestly say I've never read one of these. I've had one, I've been a part of one, but
I've been part of a couple of them, and I mean, I always like cross my fingers, please let it appraise.
yeah.
And you know, it does, but like in one case, we had to just change the down payment. And I kind of modified a few things and we added mortgage insurance, was super cheap. And really because the price went down a little bit, like they were paying less, but they had to cover so much of a gap, their monthly payment went down. And they got more equity in the long run, you know, even though they're like they had to pay less.
Be open and communicative with your lender, and there's ways to work it out if it does come up with issues with appraisal. Don't think it's dead in the water.
Yeah, and I think you just tell people like, in 5 years, is it gonna matter if you overpaid a little bit for the house? Probably not.
You'll probably forget about it, honestly.
Right. Yeah.
All right, so backup contract addendum. I think this is probably the most underutilized thing ever. So I'm gonna go through this quickly, but just keep in mind, when you lose out on multiple offers, my first thing is, can I be the backup offer? Because you know how many contracts fall apart because of inspection, because the buyer gets cold feet. And sometimes it's the next day it falls apart because that buyer's like, I did not want this house. Why did I put an offer in? So backup offers, very important. As a listing agent, get a backup offer. What's better than something falls apart? You said it's a negotiation and inspections. We're not doing any repairs. You don't agree with it? We'll just go for a backup offer. Great negotiation tool for both sides. All right. Backup offer, what is it? When does it come into effect? And how can you terminate it and find a better house somewhere? That's happened too. All right. So what is a backup contract? It is a binding contract. So do keep in mind, it is binding for the buyer and the seller too. So it only comes into effect if the initial contract fails to close. So if it does not go through, the buyer then goes under contract. The second buyer goes under contract. You have to put in here which backup contract it is. Are you in the first position, second position, third position? When multiple offers were like, we were getting 13, 15 offers on every house, I had 4 or 5 of these in a row. But then, you know, no inspections and it fall apart often. So then always come to that. Make sense so far? All right. So we start off with if a contract does fall apart, then the seller has to notify the buyer in writing of the initial contract termination. So that means the seller, and we'll go down this further in the addendum, but I'll show that to you in a minute. They will notify the buyer that the first contract fell apart. And then as soon as the seller delivers that, oops, sorry, too many buttons. It then makes the backup contract then the primary contract. So once the seller sends that to you, you're now under contract. So keep that in mind. It happens that quickly. Very cool, can happen very quickly. So if you're the backup contract, you're in your first and number 1 position. The seller terminates the first contract. I'll show you the notice of termination. When they send you the initial contract termination, you automatically become under contract. What's better than that? Call your buyer, like, guess what? That house you loved? Now we're moving forward. Pretty cool? Great feeling. All right, then we got to talk about what else can the buyer do. So if the buyer's out still looking, because you can't count on them terminating and you being the backup contract, so you're still able to look. Now, if the buyer's making another offer and it gets accepted, you better be very quick at terminating this backup contract. Otherwise, your buyer's going to have 2 houses. So you need to make sure that you're very prepared to issue the seller a termination of backup contract. Okay? You only have the right to terminate up till the time the seller sends you the initial contract termination. Now that's a lot of words. That makes sense? So 2 things you have to do. This is the top one. It's what the seller's going to send you when they say, hey, my first contract didn't work out. You're now under contract. That's what you'll get from the seller. If you want to terminate, you send the bottom part that says, we found something better, we're terminating our contract. Sound good?
And so you have to send that before they.
Before they send the top one.
Yeah, as soon as you go under contract, basically.
Yeah.
On the other house.
So basically, if you're writing an offer on another house when you're the backup contract for one, you better have that already signed and ready to send as soon as you get an accepted offer. Make sense?
Yes.
And I actually send it, if they're gonna write on another house, I actually send it before, because you don't wanna ever be in
That's a good thing too.
negotiations. I wouldn't wanna be in negotiations and then get that back and then.
With your buyer's permission, they may not want to lose their backup position, but yes, yeah.
So the minute you send it, even though the other party hasn't signed it, are you safe at that point?
The other party doesn't have to sign it, just a notice, yes. If you look, it only has to be signed by one party. The notice of the primary contract being terminated, only the seller signs. The buyer only signs the notice of termination. So it's only one party signed. People hate that when only one side has to sign it. Y'all just go nuts. It's funny. Yes.
How do you, think of the question, but like if, I understand what you just covered. When do you know that like your backup offer is not going to be accepted?
When they close.
Is that really the only
Yeah.
time that you find out about that?
Because that's the only time it's completely null and void is when it closes.
So you can have it if they're really looking around and they have that problem for 20 days and they're still looking around.
Yeah.
That'd be really solid. Like, hey, you're still 20 days in.
And you could, I mean, I could show you another form, or you could terminate it if you just don't want it hanging out there anymore, because they're like, we really don't want that one anymore. And it's just making you nervous, that you're gonna forget about it, you could terminate it.
Okay.
That would be my advice. If it's sitting out there long enough and it still hasn't closed, it's probably a good
Might
idea
as
to
well
terminate
just
it.
get rid of
Yeah,
it so you're just focused on the.
yeah,
Gotcha.
that would be, yeah, and that's probably a good thing to think about, because if it sits out there long enough, you might be like, oh my God, I forgot about that, and now you got a house, and yeah. And I just say, and I forgot to mention this, so back up just a little bit. Once that they send you that notice of the termination of the initial contract, and now, yeah, I'm under contract, that also means everything starts just like the day after you get offer acceptance, day after it starts earnest money deposits, inspections, everything starts just like an acceptance date. Make sense? Sorry, I skipped that part. Yeah, just like any other initial contract acceptance, you're starting. Yeah.
One thing that I've seen that some agents forget to do, if you're sending this, sometimes they'll sign this and they'll forget to have their seller will forget, the listing agent will not have their clients actually sign the actual contract. They actually need to write up the contract in the contingency section, subject to first position backup offer. Their clients need to accept the offer.
You know, and I'm gonna make a note to add that on here.
It's 2 and 2, like they have to do that, because if they didn't do that, no, you actually don't have, all you've got is an addendum that's signed, you don't have a real.
Yeah, they have to sign this. Yeah, this is an addendum to a purchase contract, so you have to have a full purchase contract as well. Good point. I had forgotten about that, so.
Oh, no, you're good.
Probably 20 hours of putting this together.
I
I
know.
forgot
No,
something.
you're, yeah, what are you gonna
I'm
do?
useless.
That's okay.
That's why I like input from everybody, because I can't remember everything. So yes, that is, because I've seen it many times, people have forgotten that. All right. So it's pretty easy. Backup contracts are fun. So sales contingency, at one point, this was actually 2 completely separate contracts. I'm glad it's all on one, because I think it's actually more clear when it's all on one contract. So sales contingency, I know everybody's like, they never happen. They still do happen. Believe it or not, they still do happen, and they still work out pretty good. So everybody know what a sales contingency is? So I'm going to buy your house, but not till mine sells. I got it for you right now. Are you all new agents? This stuff happens. It really does. It's not a myth. I'm just teasing. All right. So the couple different things. We're talking about what the buyer does. We're talking about what the seller does, because they have two different things they can do. They have a written notice required or written notice is not required. What the performance means and how you waive your sales contingency. Not as complicated as it seems. People think these are complicated. They're really not. They're very, very, very straightforward. All right. So what the buyer does, the buyer says, I've got a house I'm going to sell. This is my home address. This is the house I'm going to sell. This is how many days I'm going to sell it in. What I would emphasize very strongly with the buyer, the default is 7 days. That kind of sets an expectation. That means when you're writing sales contingency, you better be ready to list your house that day. Doesn't mean I still got to do some repairs. I still got to clean my house. That's usually the worst one. Some people are slobs. You've got to be ready to sell your house. Your house needs to be in sellable condition, not I'm going to sell it someday condition. So emphasize that with your buyer. If they're thinking sales contingency, they need to be ready to sell. Yes, you can change that date, but that when they put a date in there, it's a suggestion for a reason. So what
Combined with the offer that has.
Yeah, this is when you're putting in an offer and you're saying, I can buy your house, but I'm making it contingent on my house selling. My house going under contract. Does that make sense? Yes. And this does happen, especially in like the winter market, late fall, winter market. You can see these quite a bit. All right, so this says at the on or before the end of that period that we just said, that 7 days, 10 days. I usually see 30 and 60 days. You don't see that very often anymore. I'm going to notify the seller in writing whether or not my house is under contract. If it's under contract, that means I'm going to set that sale date for my house to be on or before the sale date for the contract I put in the purchase contract. Make sense? So you can't close on your house after the one you're buying. It has to be before the one you're buying. If it's not under contract, guess what happens? Purchase contract terminates. You're done. Or you can try to extend it if the seller agrees to it. That's what it does.
So you're saying.
That's what that last line there says. It shall automatically terminate. It's right on the bottom there.
So on that one line, you're actually saying that you're actually declaring as the buyer that your house is going to be sold by that date.
Yes.
Whatever date you put in there.
Yes.
And if it's not within that date.
You better hope you've got a nice seller that's willing to let you change that date. To look for that house that's been on the market for like 300 days.
Yeah.
It might be really desperate to sell.
Overpriced, or it's never going to sell.
Yeah. Not saying it doesn't happen, just not in every situation. All right, so what does the seller do? Number one, realize the seller has a right to accept another offer. If you have a sales contingency, they have every right to accept another offer. So you better sell that house quick. Because that's the whole idea of this. So what the seller does, if you check that the seller is required to give you a written notification, if they're required to give you a written notification, you don't have days to decide what to do, you have hours. So if they give you notifications that they have got another offer, 12 hours, 24 hours, you decide what your next step's going to be. And that next step is either you're waiving the sales contingency or you're terminating the contract. So it's serious. It's not get to play around. Make sense? Good thing is it can get you a listing really quick when they have a sales contingency. When it is required that they give notice, the status in MLS has to go pending. There's no playing around with this if you're the listing agent. Don't play this game. It has to go pending. If you're caught having a sales contingency with this checked here, it has to be a pending status. The game a lot of listing agents like to play. If a notice is not required, basically meaning if they do not require it, if you require no notice, means they can just take another offer and your offer is terminated. Then they can leave the status as active. So there could be an active house out there that has multiple sales contingency offers on it that are accepted. And they're just waiting for the first house to sell. You know who does that? Builders. Only person I've ever seen do that. They don't want people that would do that.
The bummer of that is you don't get the house you wanted and your house is sold.
Mhm. Yeah,
That would not be good.
one catch on this to keep in mind. If you list your house, but they say, when you're under a sales contingency to purchase, you list your house, you get an offer on it. That offer you get cannot be contingent on the sale of that buyer's property. I've seen it happen, but it actually says in here it cannot. So can't have like sales contingency on sales. It doesn't, can't happen that way.
That's just something you tell that buyer, like, hey, I'm gonna buy a house on this. I can have you finish on yours.
Yeah, and I guess like anything, I guess you could waive that if you chose to as a seller or as a buyer, but why would you? It's a lot of risk. Any questions on that? I know it's a lot to think about, but it's pretty straightforward. Okay, so which one do you want as the buyer?
You will.
Yeah, when it's a seller, you want the bottom one. So what's your fighting over? Which one you're gonna get? So typically what you see is you see the top one, but you see a very limited number of hours. Like you get 6 hours to decide what to do if I get another offer. So it's a compromise. Sellers just hate going pennies. That's the biggest issue. It's fine. You guys don't have questions. Like, so to me, that one always made sense once you understood what it meant. All right. So performance just basically means that it just says everything starts, all the performance dates start, meaning like contract acceptance dates all start once the buyer gives notice. Buyer's notice is that, hey, my house went under contract. That's buyer's notice. So it doesn't mean anything more than that. Waiver of contingency. There's 2 reasons a buyer can waive contingency. One is my house went under contract. Other is, hey, I talked to my lender and now I can purchase without selling my house. Make sense? And sometimes it's like, I always could. Now I'm just deciding to buy without selling my house because they realize that they're not risking it anymore. Make sense? Easy enough? So not too scary, right? Not always fun to deal with, but they're not as scary as it could be. And the rest of these actually, I think, are pretty straightforward. Okay, so this is the one nobody wants to see, but I'm going to make sure you guys understand it because this is one that's probably the most commonly misused one, and I think it is hilarious because the first thing I'm going to point out, first of all, when do you use this? Notice of termination of contract. Sorry, it's running late. I know it's a 90-minute class.
It's been excellent.
Good.
Thank you for.
I haven't pasted out in front of people, so I never know how many questions there's.
Thank you for including us.
Of course, I liked your input. It was great.
Thanks. I didn't mean to be like the lender that,
No, it was really good. I just cut you off on the appraisal gap because I could kind of figure out what you were going to say. So thank you. So notice of termination. Nobody wants this to happen, but it happens. So when do we use notice of termination? What is a terminating party versus non-terminating, and who has to sign it? So it's probably one of the ones I think is the most misused. When do we use this? It tells you right in here exactly when you use it. You use it to facilitate notifying the other party you're terminating the contract based on a contingency that's already built into the contract. Pretty straightforward. Who does it? Your client. So you're never going to write this for the other side. So either you're writing it on behalf of the buyer or the seller, whoever your client is. Make sense? So your client's going to be the terminating party. The non-terminating party is going to be the person that you're notifying. It's going to be the other side. I know that sounds weird, but people actually have a hard time understanding that. Skipping the middle part on purpose, I'll go to that in a second. So at the bottom, if you notice, only requires one set of signatures. The terminating party is the only person that has to sign this. And I'll tell you how many phone calls I took as a manager when the other side, the non-terminating side, was so upset that they did not have to sign this. You cannot terminate a contract without me signing it. Yes, you can. Because what you also need to read, the second part of that very top thing, read the bottom line in there. What does that talk about? It does not facilitate the dispersal of earnest money. So this has nothing to do with earnest money. This is just saying the contract is done. Okay? Why can the contract be done? So you're gonna check on here if it's the buyer or the seller. And what I want you, oops, hold on, let's go back. What you to look at is on the end of each one of these lines, it tells you right here, who has the right to terminate because of these reasons. It actually tells you. So I realize the buyer has a lot more reasons to terminate than the seller. The financial change. It's one of those boxes, right? So what happens if it doesn't fit one of those boxes? There is the other contingencies box. But specifically what it says next to there, it already has to expressly be a part of the contract. So one of these addendums we already wrote, one of the things was already added into the contract, it already has to be part of the contract to be a terminating factor for the contract. You can't just make something up and write it in there. People are very creative. I got to give that to agents. They are very creative sometimes, but it has to be a part of the contract to be a valid terminating reason. Make sense? Any questions on that?
So all just makes sense. Explain it.
But I think that's a compliment.
Yeah, I mean, and then there's a compliment. It's like to look at the paper and just see all that stuff.
It's a little overwhelming.
Like there's just so many bullets. Oh.
And that's a good way too to explain to your clients too when they want to get out of a contract. Look, if I want to terminate, these are the valid reasons to terminate. Otherwise, we're leaving ourselves open to a battle. And I wouldn't say lawsuit. I'd say possible. Be careful because we're not lawyers. So use that word possible or yeah, it's always be careful on that. I got caught saying that in front of a lawyer one time.
No, babe, I had one that canceled. Oddly enough, another contract when I was on vacation, but they canceled it because their house they wanted went on. So we found.
Oh, I've had that happen.
Yeah, we had a little loophole and we wrote something that like we said that and this, it was enough to terminate it, but obviously like Aaron's money, like we're like, you can have it, and they're like, well, we're still gonna, swing of us or, sue and do stuff. So as long as your client knows with certain things, I found within doubt, the insurance one is an easier one, like if they've got cold feet to pop in there, but if they're unhappy with it, right?
Be careful on it though, because if their mortgage person has already done a pre-approval, most mortgage people include insurance as part of that pre-approval, and it's, yeah, be careful.
Yeah, but it's estimated cost, but what I've seen is people leaving contracts for property insurance recently because of the
Yeah, I would just be careful. I'm waiting for someone to fight that. Because if it's not outside what is now considered normal, it may not be what you want it to be, but outside of what is considered normal now. Note for insurance, be careful when you're renewing. My insurance guy just told me new premiums could be considered to be 1% of your replacement value. Not premiums, deductibles. So if your replacement value in your house is 400,000, your deductible could be $4,000. Keep that in mind. We're trying to find out if there's any alternative to that. Luckily, I don't have to renew till November. Like, guess got to raise that emergency fund. But yeah, I know, just saying be careful because I know people have used that insurance, but I have a feeling someone's going to get caught doing something eventually, and I don't want to be the example.
oh yeah, no, I had one that it was either put on a roof or they wanted to insure the property.
Yeah. Yeah. That's actually one I got who need to put on a roof for that reason. I didn't think they would insure it based on the condition of the roof. So, all right, so just want to put on here again, it does specify the only signatures are needed are the signatures of the terminating party, and it does not affect earnest money. So it does say that twice. What do we say when it says it twice? Pay attention.
Why
Yeah.
would it not?
You don't need permission to terminate because of a contingency. The contingency is built in to give you a release from the contract.
But why would they not? The contract's all null and void.
Because earnest money is a side part of the contract. It is not, it's not a money thing. There's a separate part with the earnest money.
Yeah.
That's this one.
It's got its own thing.
Yes, it does. And you can actually use the mutual release and not use the termination. the termination is like, if you know it's gonna be difficult, sometimes sending the termination first basically says, hey, this is, because on here, it doesn't ask for a reason. So if you want to make sure the seller understands why you're terminating, the termination gives them the exact reason. Make sense? It's very explicit, it's very straightforward, this is why we're terminating. Because if you just send them over saying, we want the earnest money, then nowhere on this is ask you why. So that's the reason why the termination is kind of good to send first and then send the earnest money second. Because they do have to sign this. So this, we're going through on this one, when to use, what needs to be filled out, what to do when there's a dispute, and who needs to sign. So once again, the RATC is very nice. Almost all their forms have directions right across the top. So please pay attention. If it's outlined in a box across the top, it usually tells you when you're supposed to use it. So it's very nice that it's there. So this is for dispersal of earnest money. So when do you use it? When you're going to disperse earnest money. Hopefully get somebody to agree to do it. So what's on here? So this basically says that we're going to release each other. It's missing a highlight on there. It's going to release each other from the purchase contract. That's on the first line, is not highlighted. And it's the buyer's releasing the interest in the real estate, and the seller is going to have the right to sell the real estate again. They're very explicit in that. And then it's also releasing the agents from any liability. That's nice too. Like, hey, we're not going to be in trouble either. So we're all released from anything to do with this contract. Easy enough. Then we go on to who's getting what. So once again, I didn't know how else to describe. Is there a better way to say, write it out in words? I mean, written out amount's the best one I came up with. Actually, that part might be better. Money, amount, and I don't, word form maybe. I'll try that, see if that works. Yeah. And it's just one of those, like it's like in my head, like, a better way to say this. So write it out, put the numbers down. So however much the earnest money is, we all know where we find that, right? On contract, page 1. Okay. We're gonna write out who's holding it. So we have to know who's holding it. That's also that first paragraph, so easy enough to find. Then we get the fun part. Who's it going to? So if you're the buyer's agent, you want it to go to the buyer. Or if you're really good, you want it to go to you. So you can put buyer's broker and have it go to you if the buyer agrees to it. I've had a buyer give it to me before. Or give it to my broker, not to me. Broker. So that's what this says. When it says buyer's broker or seller's broker, you put the broker name there, in case you guys were wondering what that space was for. And then the amount next to it. Or to the seller, if you're going to give it to the seller, if you're representing the seller, put the amount going to that person. Easy enough? The reason it went to that time was they were walking away from the contract for a non-valid reason, and we were able to fight and get them the earnest money back rather than take it themselves, they give it to us. Because it with so much work it's on it too. Transaction. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I didn't ask for it, they just did it. So if there's a dispute over earnest money, I just want to state it up front, you've probably been told 100 times, it is not our job to settle that dispute. That is between the buyers and the sellers. We try to facilitate it. We try to make it happen. It's not our job to keep pursuing it. So if there is a dispute, our job is to check that box and say there is a dispute. We can't agree on who's getting it. Make sense? We fight for our clients as best we can. We cannot spend time and energy continuing to fight over earnest money for them. Has any manager ever told you different? Just want to make sure if anybody contradicted me on that. I always say wait till it goes back under contract, then we'll ask again, because that's usually when they're more willing to do it. Because then they're like, okay, we're done.
Yeah, the situation that I had was rough, but we just wanted them to sell it, take it, because we're breaking it for bad reasons. But we gave them, like I would check in, we gave them like 2.5 weeks to stew on it. And then finally they were like, yeah, we'll just take their money out of the lawsuit.
Yeah, that's usually, once people cool down, they tend to be a little bit more reasonable, so, yeah. But just keep in mind, it's not our job to settle that dispute. Now, both parties need to sign it, so if it is just a dispute, I mean, honestly, if one side doesn't sign it and it's disputed, it doesn't matter because they're not releasing it. Probably more important, you have some other paperwork releasing it. But honestly, once a party has shown intent for the contract not to continue, talk to management on how you want that to continue if you do not have a fully signed release. You probably need something in writing showing that both parties are not intending to continue. Because if this isn't signed, I mean, number 3 on there says that it releases the agents from liability. I'd really like to know that I'm not responsible for anything anymore on this contract. So if you do not get the other side to sign, I would definitely talk to a manager. What do they call them here? I'm always used to saying manager. Team lead?
or broker. Most of the times they recommend that we talk to our broker.
Okay, it's broker.
On that.
Sorry. Yeah, sorry. I'm like, coming from the brokerage I came from, we had managers. We had like small offices, so we had office managers. So. Huh? Susan. Everybody just calls Susan anytime he comes.
She's in a row.
Let her know that I said any issue you ever have, call Susan. Any questions on this? So if you ever have to terminate, at least you think you can talk logically to your clients and say, okay, this sucks, but I can tell you exactly what we need to do and why we're going to do it. That's the idea.
And I'm gonna just add a note, not necessarily on this, but the determination. Anytime that I've just had to let it go for the seller or whoever, you know, if I'm not sure how to fill out that section, I do ask the broker or manager and say, because they're representing the brokerage, so they're making that decision, so they're telling you what you should do, so if you got their guidance and it was something wrong, then.
Yeah, it should always come from above you.
Yeah.
Yeah, because what I'm teaching here is either what I've learned from my brokerage, my experience as a manager, my experience as an agent. So I may not be 100% right. So if you're ever not sure or you're not positive about something, ask. As I said, it doesn't matter how long I've done this, I still have questions. I still make mistakes. It's nothing to be embarrassed about if you don't know. Now, the next one I'm going to show you, I will be shocked if any one of you has ever used this form. I'd be really shocked if you've ever used it. I'll be surprised if you've even heard of it. How many of you have heard of this form? All right, so best guess. When would you use it and why? There you go. Why would you use it? Somebody else? Becky?
Seller had put out a counter offer, but suddenly you just got 3 more offers in, and they're all better than your counter offer.
That's one of the a lot of people
I
don't
had
think
that,
that.
and
So seller gets one decent offer and they counter it. But while before that counter offer is accepted, you get a bunch more offers that are better than even what your counter offer was. So now you don't want that counter offer out there. You want to be able to accept one of those other offers. You've got to rescind that counter offer.
I mean, it did make the agent very mad, but I'm like.
That's
I
business.
warned you. I said, I warned you that it was busy and I wouldn't take several hours and it didn't take but.
That's a very quick response.
Well, there's several reasons you do it. Say you're out looking at houses one weekend. First night out, you see a bunch of houses, they make an offer on one of the houses. They're like, it's great, I love it. Next day, they go to an open house. They fall in love with that house. You're still waiting on an offer response on that house. You want to write on another one. And you're like, but what if they accept that one? You know, they're reviewing offers when you're writing the other one. You may want to rescind that first one so you don't get 2 accepted offers. Several reasons to use it. But it's not one you commonly see, but it is definitely something that is to protect you. You can't have 2 offers. I mean, unless they can buy 2 houses, you don't want 2 offers. Seller can't sell the same house twice.
Well, and
Several reasons to use it.
And if you have a listing with someone, just send you an email that says rescinding or whatever.
Yeah, we'll actually address that because yes, that is one way to do it, but this is the better way to do it. And we'll show you. I always say there's a good way and there's a better way, right? We always like to do it the best way because that's what we're supposed to do. All right. So you send this. You can only rescind an offer before it's been accepted. So once an offer's been accepted or a counter offer's been accepted, you can't rescind it. So just to be clear. So when you're filling this out, you need to make sure you put in the seller's names, the buyer's names, the name of the person rescinding. So that would be your client. The other party, which would be the other side, and the date on the offer. Okay. It's a little bit different, so make sure we go through that. So you guys seeing that on your on your form? Everybody caught up? So this is one mystery you haven't seen, so I want to make sure you're keeping up with this one. All right, so then this little box, this is going to say that you've given notice of rescission before, it's been previously communicated, and how was it communicated? So this is basically saying, yes, I'm putting it in writing now, but I've already told you before. So did I text it to you? Did I email it to you? How did I tell you before? So it's got all the choices. How did you do it? Well, who did you tell it to? And then how was it given? So written is any type of written communication, text, email, and then verbally, did you call them, talk to them face to face? Just go show up at their office. I'm taking it back. No more offers. So electronically, so I guess electronically, if you actually scanned it in or emailed it, you should have electronic signature knowing when it went through. Dot loop, you do a dot loop, you know when it goes through. Sorry, DocuSign.
Does that kind of like, my text me saying, hey, resend it, and I just say, I'll. Confused on that part.
Okay, so your buyer tells you that he or she wants to rescind the offer.
Yeah.
So you reach out, and I would not call somebody because calling people is, calling for lead gen, awesome. Calling to relay information to another agent that could become in dispute, not a great idea. Written is much better.
Yeah.
Text, email, much better. I would get a hold of that agent and a written form of communication saying, my buyer is rescinding their offer. I will get over the form to you as soon as possible. I'm just letting you know, as of this time on this date, our offer is no longer in play. Immediately go into whatever digital signing software you use, get this form set up, send it over to your buyer, and tell them you need to sign this ASAP. Make sure they understand they need to sign it right away. So cover your butts. It's important. You don't want to get yourself in trouble. Good enough? Yeah. Very underutilized, but very important. Oh, I'm sorry. The bottom just says, it's really small. Says just no longer open for acceptance. So basically that's rescinding the offer is no longer open for acceptance. And make sure only requires signature from the rescinding party, does not require signatures from both sides. Another form that drives people crazy. The agents really don't like when they don't get to sign paperwork. You ever notice that, Becky? What? Agents hate when they don't get to sign paperwork. They always want to make sure they get to sign it. Not agents, like their clients. All right, so one of the last ones we're going to go into. And I'm not going to go into, I'm sorry, any questions on it? I think we covered all, but any additional questions? All right. So one of my favorite ones, but first of all, we realized in our dot loop we had the wrong form in there. So make sure you guys don't have this exact form, meaning look at the bottom. There should be a section to write dollars in here. If you have that one. Defect notice is probably one of the most misused forms I've ever seen in my life.
You technically not allowed to give her one, but it's the other one.
This is what's current on our agency's website. That's a Susan question on what you're technically allowed to use.
There's a lot of these forms.
I've seen it sent over on an addendum and not even on the defect notice. So yeah. So defect notice. So what is a defect? That's the first thing. A defect is a material condition that adversely affects the use of the real estate. Open to interpretation there, but I would always say when you're going into a purchase contract, educate your buyers on what a defect is, things that should be requested to be repaired, because some of these things are ridiculous to come up on defect notices. So what is not a defect notice is minor routine maintenance and cosmetic items are not defects. Paint chips are not defects. Discoloration in carpet is not defects. It's annoying, it's not defect. So just keep that in mind. When you are writing this up, make sure your buyers realize that they have to include relevant sections of the inspection report in order to request the defect to be fixed. So what does that mean? They want to do a defect notice, you have to do an inspection of some kind. They don't have to do a full all house inspection, so don't read into that. If they just want to have the roof done, they could just do the roof. They're allowed to do that. But they do have to include some type of backup for the repair that they're requesting to be done. And if they're really smart, they'll even include something that actually shows what the cost would be to get it done. That person, the seller may not use their vendor, but it's helpful to give as much information up front as you can. Any questions about that?
You say cost, so the bar is saying this, they have an inspection, I said it's gonna cost $1,000. Isn't it something like that, that has to be like a quote, like back that up?
Yeah, my example being like, if say the only thing they're concerned about is they look at the roof, like roof looks really old, like we're not worried about anything else in the house, they've got a fear of the roof caving in on them. So instead of doing a whole house inspection, they elect just to have someone come out and look at the roof. That's a full-fledged roofer. That roofer is coming out, they're giving them a quote. Share that quote with the seller. That's what I mean by that. If you have the information readily available, share it. Does that make sense? Now, I'm not saying go out and get every repair you want done, quoted, but if it's available, share it. Does that make more sense? Yeah. That's just, I've had more and more people do that where their only concern is specific things, not whole house inspection. I got my house, that's all I wanted was a roof. I'm so glad I did it. It was expensive. So I'm going to give an example. One of the biggest things I think the big pet peeve of mine is when you request something to be done, you have to describe what the defect is. And the other thing is you have to describe what you want done. So on this one, it says the mast head is loose from the exterior wall. So telling me that is great. Good information. What do you want me to do about it? So example would be evaluate the electric servo cable mast head and perform recommended repairs. Simple, straightforward, easy to understand. Another big thing for me, this is something I do every time. The page it's on and the exact one that it is. Right there. It just makes it so much easier to be extremely clear on what you're requesting to be done. I know that can be a little detailed, but makes it my life so much easier that I can look exactly what repair you're looking at. Yeah. Easy enough? Okay. Just saving everybody a lot of time. And I know the defect notice does not have a whole ton of space to write in. And sometimes you're going to have to go on other pages, but keep it concise, keep it easy. I also, when I do them, if you guys haven't done this in the past, like if I've got electrical repairs and plumbing repairs, I group everything together so that it makes it very easy to read. Or if it's exterior and interior or whatever, like I try to keep it together so it makes sense for like who they would hire to do that type of stuff. So just anything to make it clear and easy and seem like less work for the person that's doing it. Because I said, like, say I got plumbing and electric and roof. And then it looks like they've got 3 repairs to do versus 15 things to do, even if there's 5 or 6 listed under each one. These make sense? Keep it simple. All right. So on here, it's going to ask you, sorry, lost track of where am I? Everything has to be performed in a professional workmanlike manner with someone that is qualified to make the agreed corrections. So professional qualified to make the agreed corrections. So one thing I will caution you on as a seller's agent or as a listing agent, if they're not going to hire that work out, make sure that when you counter, you specify that. Because sometimes it's a simple thing like tightening down a banister. If they're going to do it themselves, just make a note of that so that the buyer is aware that that's what's going to happen. So you can't provide a receipt for something that wasn't hired out. Make sense? Okay. Otherwise, just provide a receipt. Even if you hire your uncle to do it, have them write up an invoice for you. And also, how many days prior to closing do you want to be able to verify that these are done? If you have a really quick closing, make sure you're giving the sellers time to do it. If you've got a longer closing, I would make sure that you set that out a little bit so you make sure you're not doing repairs up till the day of closing. So if you're on a 45-day close, I would give it 10 days before closing. No reason that the seller should be doing repairs that close to closing. If you're waiting for a roof in the springtime, you may want to give them a little extra time to get that done because roofers are busy. Make sense? Biggest thing I always see missed and that hear arguments about all the time. If there are repairs done due to a defect notice, the buyer is entitled to 2 walkthroughs. 1 to check inspections and 1 for their final walkthrough that they're guaranteed on the contract. That is 2 walkthroughs that are guaranteed. They are allowed to bring the inspector back through on the inspection walkthrough. They could on the final walkthrough if they wanted to as well. They're allowed to hire the inspector to come back through. I highly encourage every one of my buyers to do that. Costs them money, but why not? I'm not an expert on it. Let the inspector come back through and make sure all the repairs were done. He's the one that called them out in the first place. Okay, keep that in mind. Any questions on that? So how many times do you get these from other agents that don't do it correctly? How'd it go? Yeah, it shouldn't be overly complicated, just.
No, I had to rematch that question about for
Mhm. Mhm. That's a very common one, more common than what people realize. All right, so what can the seller do? This is the fun one. All right, it does say on the top here that you can combine, well, you can't combine A with any other one or D with any other ones, but B and C can be combined together and do a mix together. So A, really great for the buyer. They'll do everything, good to go. It's always the best response, but seller, make sure, why not, let's do it. B says, I'll do some of them, but I'm gonna work some out and make some changes to it. Easy enough. C says, and this is kind of complicated, and I would kind of tell you to be very careful doing this and call the lender if this comes up. To make sure if it's FHA, this could definitely be a concern depending on what they're putting off. This is saying that the seller will pay for the buyer's contract to do the repairs after closing. Not impossible, but could be tricky depending on the situation. Just make sure going into this, if this is one, make some calls, make sure it's going to work out for all parties involved. So you're going to make sure you know what that amount's going to be and write a description on what it's going to cover and make sure you're very detailed on what the details are going into that. Yes.
I'm in the middle of, I have my inspection tomorrow of the house. And I was kind of about my payroll, I wanted to be done. Maybe not off like the purchase price, or just getting like money to me directly, like repair it. Is that,
coming off the purchase price is now changing the terms of the loan because you're adjusting a purchase price. And handing money directly to a buyer is definitely not something that should be happening.
well, yeah, probably, but you know, I was asking about like how that plays out. That's the one, like the C is like that box. You agree to that?
No, C is if they're paying the contractor directly or placing funds in escrow to take care of the meaning they're issuing a check at closing to pay a contractor for the repairs or placing those funds in escrow. There is times where there'll be like closing costs in lieu of inspections or in lieu of repairs, that type of thing. But like the lenders were saying, talk to your team lead on how to handle that. It happens quite a bit. It's not really supposed to happen because it's not supposed to happen. I'm just going to leave it at that. It's not supposed to happen. And it can be touchy with lenders if they find out about it. Touchy with underwriting if they find out about it. So it's cleaner if they just do the repairs or
Do that with a contract.
Mhm. Yeah, and then I think lenders would prefer us not to pay contractors at closing for work that's not already done.
It's
Yeah.
just, again, you always consult.
Consult with the lender. Call the lender first if there's a concern about repairs and how to pay.
We just crazily, I can't believe the limit of that, but we had about, it's probably $24,000 for their invoices that were sitting on the settlement statement, and they blinked left, but they knew what it was.
Oh, no, I've
And
taken
again,
out the
you have to
repairs that
ask
were already
a
done.
bunch of stuff on
Yeah.
it, and then if you are doing it at closing costs, then
Super random.
You want to do a separate addendum, just saying there's sample.
Yeah, yeah. So that is really the last thing. Actually, sorry. Last part is the seller's not doing anything. So don't be surprised if you see that. Always prepare your buyer. The seller can refuse to do any repairs. So recap, we did cover all of these. And actually with the lender's introduction, I think we were right at 90 minutes because I think it take a little to get done. So real quickly before you leave, because I'm always supposed to ask, any takeaways from today? You guys think this was an interesting class? Yeah. Good. Glad to hear that. That's the idea is that when you do have to do them, you're like, wait a minute, I know how to do this now. They pull them out next time and yeah. Good.
Mess my schedule around. I wanted to so I have reading everything, really with all that.
Well, and honestly, pulling these up and just looking at them is kind of boring.
Yeah, having minutes that I'll like already print it out and I'm already taking notes on myself.
Good, good. Yeah, or the one is sent to you, you're like, wait a minute, we went through this. Yeah, good. Thank you, guys.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, and sorry to the Brian Lake, and thank you for sticking it out. 'Cause like I said, I hadn't done this live in front of someone. I mean, I read it out loud and thought I paused long enough, but it's always hard to predict the actual length. So, and it's great questions from you guys. I love the input. Thank you.
I just wanted to say thank you, Jennifer, so much for the class.
Alex, you got before? You play before? Okay. Cardi, William, you want to write with Alex? You want to come?
Sorry, it ended up being 9 minutes instead of. I had a feeling it was more. I did also.
Sorry that I had a mistake.
You probably knew this.
Yeah, but I got the packet because I want to learn it too. So did they zoom it?
There's somebody on Zoom. One there, one blonde there.
Ashley, I told her that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Good.
I told Jenna, like, I don't like Zoom, so as long she can listen, but I can't
And they'll
interact
be
on
able to
Zoom
do
while there's
They
live
got the
people.
packet, so they can follow along. With what we're doing, so.
Yeah. I think they all enjoyed it, so. Good.
Are you right, Alex?
It's nice meeting you. Thanks for your input.